My name is Travis and this is Dev Tips. I hope you brought a clean change of pants because today we're about to get messy. Today we're going to be talking at... That's right. We're going to be looking at... Call them what you want. Alerts, notifications, pop-ups. We're going to be looking at all of these things. That's right, today we're going to be looking at introducing new items to the page using some pretty nice animations. It should be really fun, but if it's not, that's okay. I heard the Treehouse has some great deals on tech degrees. The code for today's video, again, is going to take place in CodePen, so you guys can go check out all of this code right now live on CodePen. And similar to like the other videos how we've been doing, I've set up the CodePen to work with Jade here. If you're not comfortable with Jade, you can click this little drop down and view compiled and see some old school HTML, and that's just fine. Also, I'm working with Sass for the CSS, and you can again view compiled CSS. And then I have just some JavaScript triggering mechanisms going on. Not a big deal. So where should we start? Okay, how about this? If you haven't seen the first 3 videos of this series, these ones here, then you should probably go check them out. They talk about what we're doing syntactically. How do you accomplish an animation with HTML and CSS? And then the third one talks about, from the point of view of the user, when should we be using animations in terms of usability and helping the user to understand what's going on the page. Now I'm going to give you some examples of that today, and we're going to be building some things out, but that's a great overview of really what you should know coming into this video here. So having said all that, let's get started. Let me show you the 3 things that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be talking about notifications, alerts, and modals. So this first one here, these all work, by the way, currently with CSS. This first one here is kind of like an Instagram kind of a bottom bar there, and if you click on the notifications button, you get a summary of what type of notifications are waiting for you. So in this case, you have 9 views, 4 comments, and 6 new followers. And what we want to do in a few short minutes, we're going to look at this and say, okay, how can we bring delight and interest of the user into this action by using animation? Let's scroll a little bit down there to get a preview of what else we got in store. We have this mock website called The Many Faces of Murray. And if you click a Bill Murray face, you get notified that you clicked a Bill Murray face. So this is going to be talking about alerts, like something happened on the page, or like, there's an error maybe, or you can go undo something. This would be a great kind of alert for that. And then finally, this is going to be more of like, how do you introduce a modal to the screen? But basically we have a Bill Murray button, and if you click it, there's a modal that pops up over the content, and it'll dismiss itself. You can dismiss however you like. That's not really the point. What we're going to be doing is looking at how do you kind of animate this modal to help the user understand like where it came from, why it's there, how do they get rid of it once they're done using it, and so forth. All right, so let's go back up, scroll up to the top of these 3 examples, and we'll get started with this notifications bar here. So I'm not going to get too deep into the HTML and CSS of it, but suffice it to say that when you click on each of these, they have a class added to the list element called IsActive. And IsActive will add this little... this bar here is done with a box shadow inset with this color, and it'll make the color white, pure white, instead of like see-through transparent white. And it'll also turn the background a shade darker. And that's kind of it. Now what we want to do is do 2 things. Number one, when we're changing the kind of active state right here, this active, these 3 things, we want to animate them, right? We want to make them a little bit more smooth. So let's first jump into that. I'm going to find what is active actually. I'm going to scroll up here, and it's the nav li, the list item that's directly in the nav. And it's getting this box shadow and the different colors here. So if we put a simple transition on it, we should be able to take care of most of all of that here if we use the keyword all, and then just use like 200 milliseconds the good old-fashioned ease in out. And after that refreshes, let's check it out. Click on this one, and we can see that we're getting just a quick fade into these properties as opposed to an abrupt change, which is nice. But what we really want to focus on is this third button here, which gives us that notification. Currently, it's just on or off, and how we're doing that is by using this notifications element. We're just changing the display to flex, where up here, let's see, notification right here is display none by default. So we're hiding and showing based on if the parent has a IsActive class on it. Okay, so what do we want this thing to do? Well, before we get into answering that question, let's just set it up right now with an animation property in the CSS. So animation, and then we'll just call it note because it's a notification. That's the keyword. And we'll just say it will happen over 500 milliseconds to have this thing animate up. I'm just imagining it like pop ups, maybe spins up or something like that. A good old-fashioned ease in out for the timing function. And with these things, if we're going to use the keyframes, you want to use forwards. Tap down a little bit, and let's say at keyframes note. Note is the name of the keyframes, and now it's kind of connected to the notifications class right above. And we'll just start out with our framework is 0% to 100%. What do we want the main change to be? Well, let's just start off by saying good old-fashioned opacity, 0 and 1. Now it should fade over 500 milliseconds. There we go. So when I click onto it, it should fade in. There we go. And that is like the basic framework of how all the components fit together. And now that we have that, we can just get really creative with all of these things, turning the knobs, trying new ideas. And here's an idea. Use transform and use scale to make it feel like it's growing up. And so we'll just say, scale it from 0. And I put 0.1 because sometimes transforming from scale 0 can be a little bit problematic. So we'll go from 0.1 to 0. There we are. There you go. Now that's interesting. You see how the bottom arrow doesn't feel like the source. It feels like the source is like from the middle, like around here. And the bottom is coming out to point at that, which is interesting. I mean, that's fine, but what if it started here and kind of grew up from that? So what we want to do here is go to notifications and do the transform origin to be center bottom. So that way the origin of this scale, oh, I missed it. Did it work? The origin of the scale should come from the bottom. Let's try. It's coming from the bottom, but not from the bottom of what you see, because this is an after element and it's hanging down. It's coming from right here, which is good, but that's still not what I want. Now, you don't have to use bottom. You can use an absolute number from the top. And so let's just do a quick like 50 pixels from the top and see how that looks to us. That's getting there. It looks like it's coming more from the bottom right. Let's try something a little more. Let's try 60. There you go. Now it's looks like it's coming right up out of the star. That's good. That's good. I like it. So just by changing the transform origin, these things are kind of manipulated in that way till they look like they're originating from a different place. What else can we do here? Well, let's go rotate, and let's just put an arbitrary 30 degrees on that and see how that works out. Okay, looks pretty good. Little spin there. What about, there's a really good video that I think if we're going to be diving into animations that you guys should at least watch. And I'll leave a link to the video in the description below, and maybe even here's the thumbnail. But what this video is, this is a video that Disney put out talking about the laws of animation and how things move in real life and how we should emulate the properties, of the physics in real life when we're simulating things like this, digitally, or in their case when we're creating a movie or an animation. So what am I referring to? What if we did something that was a little bit more bouncy? So like this is like a linear kind of thing, right? It has a hard start and a hard end. But things don't do that in real life. If you're gonna run at somebody and then stop quickly, you're gonna have to slow down first and then kind of catch yourself. And we want to emulate that using the CSS code here. So let's do it at 50%. Why don't we say again? Let's go up and grab this code here. Transform, rotate. Let's go past 0. Let's do -10 degrees. We could also take the scale off. I don't want to make it wait till 50%. And then that looked a little bit better. It looked like it was spinning too soon. So now it looks like it's coming out, hitting, and then bouncing back. We want to over-exaggerate it again. Let's take this and duplicate it for another 70 degrees. And we'll have it come back just like 2 degrees or, yeah, 3 degrees. Now let's look at it. See how it has that kind of like reality-based like bouncing, like it had to stop and it's kind of catching itself with it, but it has like the what is it called, the inertia that it has to work with there. It's pretty good, huh? Boom, boom, good. Another thing we could do is make it seem like it's coming up, like the scale makes it looks like it's coming up from below, but this would make it, if we actually moved it down, and make it look like it's doing a little bit more exaggerated. So we say translate and translate Y 50 pixels. There we go. Cool. Another thing I thought of, instead of having the opacity land at 100 or 100%, let's do the opacity at like 50. That way it's coming in quicker visibly, but we still have all the motion. Yeah, I like it. And one other thing we can do is do another kind of rotate. Rotate what? Rotate X. Rotate X is interesting because you're not doing a rotate like this. You're doing on the X. You're doing like on the X. You're doing like this, I think. So let's say 90 degrees here on rotate X. And if we slow this animation down, let's slow it down to like 5 seconds. That might be a really long time, but you see how that rotate X kind of made it come like this. Whoa! Whoa! Looks like somebody's like releasing a Jack-in-the-Box puppet from like they're doing the crank thing. I like that. We can do the rotate X a little bit more exaggerated too. If we're using this kind of Disney ethic, let's say rotate X to be -2 degrees, so it kind of like bounces at you, comes back. I think that's good. It doesn't need to be, we can make it up like 800 milliseconds. Okay, does that sound fun? I like it. Let's move on to the next one. So what do we have going on here? We have, it's basically a toggle of this class, which will make the opacity 1 or 0 if you click on any one of these Murray faces. So let's look at this alert and see what would be a good candidate for the animation. When I built this thing, I did it so that there could be 3 main components. The first one would be the whole thing. What is it called? The alert element, which is the blue box and the black box all together. It's this whole thing right here. That's the alert element. Then there's the icon, the HTML element, which is an eye. And then the other one is this text box here, which is the black background, and that's right there. And so I'm thinking we can use all of these things and animate them at different speeds, so where they feel like they're kind of building themselves, right? Let's check that out. Now we're not going to use keyframes this time. I'm just going to use transitions and transforms. So let's go to the alert element and decide on the beginning state. So let me click it here. So obviously the first state is to have opacity 0 and then to animate it in, which is opacity 1 for this whole thing alert element. But what if we did some cool stuff with this thing and kind of rotated it in view? I'm going to take off this opacity 0 so you can just see it the whole time and talk about where it comes from. Okay, let's do a transform, and let's say like rotate 90 degrees just down. There we go. And let's do quickly, before we get too far into this, let's do a transform origin. And we'll say bottom left. Now we've got a overflow hidden that we want to take off temporarily on the website, I think it's called. Yeah. We want to see that thing kind of like hanging down. All right, and let's say for our transform, we want to have it rotate it down and scale it down too, not too far, just like, 50% down. So now when we get it back to normal, it'll be kind of growing and stuff. So let's get that done right here. Let's do a transition, and we'll say all of the things, translate over 500 milliseconds, ease in, out, and that should be good for now. So transition these things there. And so let's say what transition them to. Let's take this transform and go back to the IsActive class. So when this active class is added, we want to scale this up to 1 and rotate this to 0 degrees. So let's click on, there we go. That's what we're doing right there. We need to move it down. See how the bottom of the web page is still tucked in there? Let's tuck it down. So transform, let's translate 100 pixels by, I don't know, let's just start with 100 by 100. Okay, how about by negative 100, because we want to scoot it up. So if we have it going up, moving it this way, when we click one Murray, this will kind of float in from a little bit off to the right, so it feels like it's coming into place, like floating like that. That's good. What if we did another rotate X? Rotate capital X 90 degrees, and then now it's kind of like flipping and spinning. Let's do the trick that we learned that one time in that previous video where we, let's see, look at the, oh dear, that's not what we wanted. We look at this element and the section alert, and nope, there you go, it is active. And look at this Bezier curve, and I want to get one of these bouncy ones. So I'm going to do this type of manipulation right here. And I'm going to grab this cubic Bezier, and I'm going to put it, where was it? Ease in, out. This is what I'm going to do. And now when it bounces up, it'll have more of a blank. Okay, so let's do put the opacity back together, and let's see how this all works out. Is active have an opacity? Okay. Boom, that's a little much. That's probably a little overactive. Go back up here and do the overflow hidden. Okay, now it's boxed up like a website again. Let's click one. Oh, gee whiz, that's a really big bounce. But we don't need to go back into that situation to edit. I can edit the curves here. 2.15 is probably the problem. That could just be like 1.5. It doesn't need to be 2. There we go. A little bit nicer, a little bit softer. Maybe that's even big. 1.2. It basically, if you go past 1, you're going to get the bounce. 1.5. I'm just messing with some numbers right now. Don't mind me. Just trying to soften up that bounce. That looks good. Okay, now let's think about the rest of this animation. Like I talked earlier about how I wanted it to build itself. So let's identify that little icon right here. Why don't we say that Inside of this icon, we have this the element of I, which is the actual alert thing. Let's move it down and shrink it so it kind of bounces up when it's ready. We'll do that with a simple transform. And we'll say scale it down. Just, I mean, this is, you'd be seeing a pattern of reusing these same elements to get different effects. Scale it down to like 1.2, and then we need to move it down within the blue. We want to move that bell down. So let's translate it down, translate Y vertically, and just say 50 pixels. So let's copy all this and go to where the active is, okay? Is active, and inside that find the I and give it a translate of 0 and a scale of 1, and we need to animate that. So let's put an animation on the I and say transition, transition all the things, and do it at a time of 400 milliseconds, and ease in out is fine for this one. And then here's the thing, I don't want this bell to be moving in while the whole block is doing that. I want it to wait. So what was the amount of time this takes? This takes 600 milliseconds. Let's use that as a delay. I think that should be good. Let's try it out. Okay. This thing lands, I can see the bell is really small and it comes in. Let's do the same Bezier curve. Copy and remove ease in out. And then also another thing I want to do is opacity. Good old opacity. No, one right here and 0 right there. Okay. Let's try that. That's nice. This should be this should be like maybe 4.5. Coming along nicely. You clicked them early. The last thing I want to do is kind of control this black bar. Should I have it slide out or fold out? Let's do like a flip out. Okay, so what are you called? You're called text. Let's set the before, and it'll be something similar to these, right? Not scale, will not translate either. Okay, nothing here. We want rotate Y, which is flip out this way, and just say 90 degrees, so it should be coming right at you. Transform 90 degrees, rotate Y, yes. And then in active, we'll make a text right here. We'll say rotate Y 0 degrees. So let's see what that looks like. Something didn't happen. Oh, probably the transition was not there at all. Okay, so what we want to do is all pretty much the same thing. This, you could say transform, because there's only one thing happening. 400 is fine, cubic Bezier. And then the weight should be the, what is it, 4.5 plus 4 seconds, so 8.5. Let's just say 800 milliseconds. All right. Now it should delay. After the bell comes in, it should come in. The black text should swing out. Okay, so what we're seeing here is it is rotated towards us in Z space, but let's delay it a little bit. Let's say 9. But it's not transform origin controlled. So let's go in here and put a almost done. Transform origin. Nope, that's not how you do this. There you go. Transform origin. And we want to say center right. And that way it should swing out, feeling like it's attached to that blue block. Let's try. No. Did you even see what I wrote? Oh, that's on the I. Silly bear. what am I trying to do? Right here. Okay, now let's try. Ooh! Okay, obviously, it's attached to the wrong thing. Ugh. Okay, transform origin left. You guys at home are like, right? Why would you do it to right? Why would I do it to right? Because it's like midnight right now. Okay, that looks fine, except for you see like when it comes up, it's like already back there. Like we need to, you know, do the old opacity trick to get rid of this thing. And then when it's ready, bring it in. Oh, that's not what I wanted, guys. Why is that not working? IsActive opacity. Oh, because I did the transition on transform only. So if you do it on all, it'll have to all of the elements doing the same kind of weight. So now it should be like, there we go. Let's wait a little bit longer, a whole second, and transition should take a little bit longer too, 5 milliseconds. Let's click on Bill's face. All right, maybe that Bezier is a little bit too aggressive. Let's just do a quick old ease, just a little linear. Nice. You clicked a Murray. You did it. You clicked a Murray, guys. I'm clicking Murray. Okay, so there's a lot that you could do right here to dial in the speed a little bit more, but we're running out of time, so we're just going to continue on. So this is the last one. We got it. We're going to do this. Let's do this. I hope you guys are still with me. All right, what happens here is when I click on Bill Murray's head, like a thank you notice or a modal pops up, and it says, thanks for clicking on this. Bill Murray loves you too, and keep on hacking. And the way that this kind of works is the JavaScript says, okay, when you click on this thing, you know, add an IsActive to the overlay, which is the black, like dark screen around it, and which contains the what's in it. So obviously it would show up too if you hook what's in it to the active class of the overlay. And then wait for a bit. We set a timeout function for 5 seconds and then say, take that overlay and remove the class IsActive. So the reason it goes away is a timer in JavaScript. It's not with CSS or anything else. And the reason I did that is so you can quickly just try it again and again without having to, I don't know. I didn't want to build a close button. But these principles still exist no matter how you're triggering the animation. We're just going to build the animation. Let's do the last one. All right. The first thing that I want to animate, I'm just going to build a, see the IsActive right here. Let's make a note that it is attached to the overlay. The overlay gets the IsActive class, and I want to add an animation to it. Animation, and we'll just call it overlay animation. There we go. And you know, because we have our JavaScript timer for 5 seconds, we'll just say the whole thing lasts 5 seconds. And it's going to use an ease in out timing function, and it's going to be forwards. I don't think that necessarily matters if the JavaScript is removing it, but we're going to do that anyway. Forwards. Okay, and that should be good. Let's write the keyframes. At keyframes. What did I call it? Overlay capital anim. There we are. And in these keyframes, this is going to be pretty simple. We need to do two things. We need to fade in the dark background, which is the overlay, and we also need to fade it out again. So it's really simple. We want to fade in at 0% and out at 100%. These are going to be basically the same thing. And that in and out state is going to be a background color of you know, this this RGBA 0000, or that, because it's going to be there. It's just going to have a transparent background, and because we have it set up like that, we can quickly fade in the background to say, you know, just that dark, or that gray, which is 0.3. And now we have to say, okay, what are the two sides? How much are we going to move this kind of fade in and out? Is the fade in and out going to be to 50%, and like it's like the whole thing? Let me show you 50% so you can see what I'm talking about. I'll be clear with y'all. If I do 50%, now I click it, and you see how this fade in happens over the course of 5 seconds. But the high point when it reaches that 3% is at that 30% of opacity is at 50%. But that's not what I want. I want to have it at like 15%, and the other side of 15%, close to 100, is 85. So we have 15% away from 100, 85%. So now when I click it, you'll see that this thing fades in to gray, and then pauses, and then fades out 15% away from 5 seconds. And that's the whole thing for our animation. That is cool. What we're going to be doing otherwise is we're going to be looking at this Modal, M-O-D-A-L, Modal. And this Modal also needs an animation, and we'll call it a Modal. Modal animation. Modal anim, and we'll also say it lasts for 5 seconds because that's just what we have been doing. And basically what we did for the IsActive overlay, because the overlay and the modal are like partners, right? They work on these things together. So we want the whole experience to be happening within the 5 second bounds. Now that we know what we're going to be calling it, let's make some new keyframes. And call it overlay anim. No, we're going to call it modal anim. What do we want to do with this modal? Let's click it and see what's really happening here. It just pops in. So with modals, you can have an opportunity where you can teach the user where it came from, right? So let's do this. Let's do the same kind of like thing structure here for these keyframes. Not do the background, but let's do you know, transform. And this time we're going to do a translate X and just move it kind of just off the page. Let's say negative 200%. Yeah, and then here in the 15 to 85%, it should be at 0%. Let's do that. And so basically it should scoot in. There we are, scooting in. Hey Bill, what's up? See you, Bill. Scoots out. Perfect. That's exactly what I thought would happen. We can also do a rotate. So he's like gonna flip in. How about that? 90 degrees. Hey Bill. Whoa. Are you gonna flip out? Yeah, you're gonna flip out. Let's have him coming in instead of this way, come in this way. Put a negative 90 on that. Rotate. Hey Bill. That looks good. And then another thing we can do is the good old opacity, coming in from 0 to 1 at 15% and at 85% starting to go out. Are you jocking me, Bill? All right. Opacity, and then let's recognize that we have it coming in from the left and then moving out from the left. Let's do this, guys. Copy. Let's put the 100% down here. And let's reverse all these things. So he's actually leaving the other side. It's going to come in from the left and leave from the right. So there's a journey happening. Yeah. Coming in from the left and leaving from the right. And hopefully his face is going to go up. Okay, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. Sure it is. One more thing before we wrap up on this demo. Let's go back to the idea that we had in that first one where things have a bouncy kind of inertia to them. And have a good 15% here. Let's do a 10%. And we'll translate and rotate a little bit. So this is, we're like 5% off of where it should end up. And so let's overcompensate. So where we're coming from 90, let's rotate it into like 4 degrees, like a little smaller, of course, and translate it to maybe negative 200 to 4%. Okay, let's see if the, is this good? Why is that? Oh, I have an error here. Oh, I don't have a property name. Okay, so we're gonna see if it comes in. Oh, see how it bounces in? All right, it's not gonna bounce leave, but it should. So let's do this whole thing, same, and do it here for 5 away from 85. So this is gonna be change the 10 to 90. And we'll just invert this to -4 and -4%. So it should come in and like bounce in and then get ready to go and then leave. Like if you're gonna throw a ball, you wind up and throw it, right? So that's kind of how it's gonna leave too. So come in with a bounce, settle, wind up, and leave. That's brilliant. That is brilliant. I love it. Let's review. Let's go up to the top and make these things display so we can check out our work. Okay, so the first thing was that we're gonna make this notification bar bounce in. I like it. Could be a little faster. See, the thing with animation is you don't want to make things too fast. You want people to be able to see what's happening, but at the same time, you don't want it to be too slow that it's like, they're like, come on, give me the result, you know, like give me the alert here. This is taking too long. And in truth, this is too long. I'm giving you guys probably some bad habits right now by making these things take as long as they do. But that's going to come down to you and figuring it out what's the best for your application. But there is, you know, a lot of studies done, and the prime like time for things to happen where people don't get impatient but they're still interested is in like 250 milliseconds to 400 milliseconds. So I usually just go for a 300 millisecond animation, and that's usually good. But like things where, you know, like here where they're like folding out in front of us, there's like some complexity, there's like steps to it. So that's a little bit more forgivable. But if this was a real application, I honestly would probably just do an opacity fade in. Yeah. Okay, done. Next week, we're going to be looking at what we can do with animation to let the user know that the website is working for them. So we're talking about animations of timers, loaders, spinners, progress, and before we end, I want to thank the beautiful patrons of this channel who make the production of these videos possible. What? Who? What are patrons? If those are the questions that you're asking right now, let me take a second and tell you about this. Patrons are people who watch this channel just like you, who have seen enough value from it and believe that this channel brings enough benefit to everyone who watches it in this community that they elected to offer an amount of money of their choosing to each episode that I produce. Now, the most common amount is just $4 per episode. Patrons get early videos, there's a patrons Slack channel, there's community hangouts, podcasts, more things like that. If you want to know like all the details, head to patreon.com/devtips and be a part of that community. Thanks as always, and keep on hacking. All right, we're done. We're done here.